Mhm.
Good morning, everyone. I trust everyone can hear me. Please confirm if you can hear me. Please, can you confirm if you can hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, all right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Atta, for confirming that for us. My name is Dennis Williams, and I'll be your moderator for today. Welcome to the first official session of the first/second quarter of the JIIPCC Mentorship and Internship program for the energy industry. And I'm sure that today is going to be, we are going to have a wonderful time in class today. And I trust we'll be learning so much. All right, I'll be going straight to read the announcements for today. And the announcements, the first announcement is that registration is still ongoing up to the second week. For those who are still interested in registering for our program, you have the opportunity to do that. Sorry about my screen, it's having a bit of a glitch. So registration is still ongoing for those who are interested up to the second week. After the second week, I will stop receiving in mentees. And for those who are here through the free, who registered through the free slot registration, please, you can just go ahead. You can make payments if you, at the end of this program, want to receive a certificate for it. And for those who are also yet to make complete payments, please ensure to do that before the end of the mentorship program. So we'll just be going straight ahead to read or to introduce our mentors. Sorry. And our first mentor for today is the one and only, the none other, Mr. Okeogene Ubehe. Mr. Okeogene Ubehe, I was just reading a summary of his profile. Mr. Okeogene Ubehe is a top-tier oil, gas, and energy professional whose experience spans the upstream, midstream, and downstream sector. He is driven by academics, market research, and work training experience, which is reflective in his professional experience and education. He graduated from the University of Science and Technology, where he started his career in mechanical engineering. This followed with several master's degree in project management, subsea engineering, and an MBA from schools in the United Kingdom and Rwanda. His oil and gas career took flight when he joined Ceylon Subsea Limited as a subsea engineer and ROV pilot, working for upstream companies like Nigerian Petroleum Development Company and Total Energies. He then moved to a small oil and gas startup called MG Vargas Limited that was then a major player in the NAOC AGIP land and offshore pipeline and crude oil storage, infrastructure development and operations in Bayelsa State. During this role, he led infrastructural growth projects and was the mastermind of the conception and construction of the world-class Mount Zion fabrication yard currently sited in Trans-Woji Waterfront in Port Harcourt, Rivers State. Mr. Okeogene's profile has been sent to the group. I'm sure if you want to know more about Mr. Okeogene, you can just go through his profile. We have also uploaded some of his profile online, so you can also follow Mr. Okeogene on LinkedIn. You can reach out to him, you can make connections with him, and I'm sure he'll be well to welcome you. Our next mentor for today is Egon Gong, Miss Egon Hong Obo. Egon Gong has well over a decade experience as a legal practitioner, holds a Bachelor of Law degree from the Benson University and was called to the Nigerian Bar in 2011 after being awarded a first-class honors degree by the Council of Legal Education, Nigerian Law School. Egon Gong holds a Master's of International Commercial Law degree distinction from the University of Sussex, United Kingdom, and a Master of Business Administration from Warwick Business School, University of Warwick, United Kingdom. Egongon gained experience in dispute resolution, corporate and commercial law, and mergers and acquisition, debt recovery, and energy law, while she served as an associate in the law firm of Paul Usaro and Co. and Alex legal practitioner. Egongon joined the legal team of Green Energy in January 2016 as an in-house legal counsel, and thereafter rose to the position of manager legal, where she oversees the legal team, advising the company on a myriad of legal issues pertaining to the operations and management of the oil and gas assets, oil and gas commercial transaction, projects and corporate finance and compliance issue. As company secretary, Egongon advises the board of Green Energy on corporate governance matters to ensure effective board practice in line with the company's corporate values as best practice. Egongon is an active member of the Association of International Petroleum Negotiators. Welcome, Ma. Thank you so much for being chosen to be a part of this mentorship program. We'll also be having you on ground, but we'd just like to also read the other mentors' profile. Our next mentor for today is Mr. Etulan Adu. Etulan Adu, MSc and MNSC Oil and Gas Industry Expert. He's an MSc Oil and Gas Industry Expert, holds an executive MBA from the Quantic School of Business and Technology, Washington, D.C., USA, an MSc in Petroleum Technology from Teesside University, UK, BEng in Petroleum Engineering from Gubkin University, Russia, 10 years plus experience in upstream oil and gas production, operation, energy industry expert, and global voice on international energy geopolitics, worked with major IOCs in Nigeria. Welcome, Mr. Etulam. We're happy to have you in session today. Last but not least on our mentors list is Mr. Dayo Okunsomi, if I'm pronouncing the name correctly. Mr. Dayo is a partner in the Energy and Project Practice Group at Templar. He has over 20 years of legal and commercial experience and holds a law degree from the University of Jos, Nigeria, and a master's degree in law from the University of London. After 10 years of law firm practice, he is a ethos to move in-house to join the corporate world as Group General Counsel and Company Secretary for an upstream oil and gas company, where he works out of office in Lagos, Zurich, and London. Dayo moved to the business role in 2015 and as an executive director of an indigenous oil service company, providing marine logistics support to energy companies in Nigeria and the wider West African region. Dayo rejoined Templar in 2018 and is a recognized and respected lawyer in energy and projects and corporate law. He has built a reputation as one of Nigeria's leading oil and gas lawyers, as endorsed by leading international directors ranking oil and gas lawyers, including the Legal 500, the Client's Guide to the World Leading Law Firm and Lawyers, the International Who's Who of Oil and Gas Lawyers, and the IFLR 1000, the Guide to the World Leading Financial Law Firm. Dayo's role as the General Counsel has also been recognized by leading directories, the Corporate Council 100 Africa, which identifies the most influential corporate legal advisors. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Dayo. We welcome all our mentors to today's session. We thank you for making our time to be here, and we want to say welcome. So we would like to give the floor first to Mr. Okeogene. Mr. Okeogene, the floor is yours. Our topic for today is the fossil fuel industry. So I want to hear your overview on today's topic. What do you have in stock, or what would you like for us to know as matters pertaining the fossil fuel industry? Yes, sir. You're welcome, sir.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Just to do a voice check, confirm you can hear me, please.
Yes, sir. We can hear you, sir.
Excellent. I will try to put my video. I don't know what my bandwidth is saying here. I don't know how well, but if it doesn't work well, please bear with me. Um, Good to see your face again, Dennis, and all the wonderful people of JIIPCC. I missed you guys for quite a while.
Yes, sir.
The
We've
last,
missed you.
excellent, excellent. I'm seeing those chubby cheeks, and Dennis, you have been eating JIIPCC morning, eh?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. I see my place a bit dark. Just one go. Let me see if I can just open the curtain just a minute. Sorry. I think it's a bit better now. Um, Good morning again to the wonderful people of JIIPCC. Nice to be here again to see you all. Dennis, again, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you to JIIPCC always for us to have this platform to share our experience that we've had over the years in the energy industry. I see a few of the mentors also. I share my greetings to them too. Miss Boys on the call. I see a few other mentors have joined. So, morning to everybody again. I'll try to share my screen just to share a few thoughts. We have a lot of people that are loaded here, so let me not spend too much time. I believe that some of the areas I will want to touch on are areas where they are subject matter experts. So I think they will help us to touch on those areas. Please confirm you can see my screen.
Yes, sir. We can see your screen, sir.
Okay, excellent. And today we're talking about the fossil fuel industry. This is a very, very important industry, especially in the Nigerian economy, as we all know. One of the things driving the Nigerian sector in terms of GDP as well, the oil and gas plays the fossil fuel plays a very, very important role, of which the oil and gas falls into, and many other sectors I will see, the refineries and all, they have their part to play as we go ahead. My mission today is very simple, just to give an overview of the fossil fuel industry, impact on Nigerian economy, global fossil fuel consumption, global energy consumption by source. I'll also talk about a few things about the fossil fuel impact on health, environment, and the climate change. I will play around legal perspective just to touch on it. That's not my forte, but I see a lot of lawyers on this call. I'll leave them to talk about legal framework. And again, just to touch on professional development opportunities, I believe we have a lot of lawyers and graduate graduate students again. I believe we'll talk more on that. I'll major on again the engineering part and maybe probably on the framework for regulations in Nigeria. Overview of the fossil fuel industry. Just if we talk about fuel generally, I believe most people on the call will remember the pump station in an NNPC or somewhere. And that's what we'll talk about fuels again in the Nigerian context. But beyond that, fuels touch around a lot of other places. If you look at the pictures we have, just after the filling station, you have those rigs you have there, more or less oil production in the US. That's how, and Mexico, that's how they produce their own oil in terms of oil rigs. And the fossil fuels generally, I will explain what will go down, are fuels that we get from natural sources. I don't know if you can see my pointer here, so I can use that to direct the attention of people. Can you see this?
Yes, sir. We can.
Okay, excellent. So this is what I was talking about just now. In the fossil fuel business, generally, we're talking about oil, we're talking about gas, we're talking about coal. Some of you might not know about coal, but that's what we've been using the olden days to drive trains. And that will be this third picture here. And this train we have here, they're all run by coal as a part of fossil fuel. I'll try to be very quick so other mentors can come in and explain. Overview of fossil fuel, formation of petroleum, formation of coal again is captured here. Millions of years over time where plants and animals die and they are pressurized under the soil that's underneath. It puts pressure on their remains and what they decompose and become. And over the millions of years, formation of petroleum, formation of coal now comes through this entire process. What I will do here, just to give an overview, most of you that are interested in these areas, you might need to go back and drill down so that you can have a better understanding on some of all this. But again, my understanding of our role here is to ensure that we give you insight. You go back and then you look at these things and see how you can make a lot of sense out of them. Overview of the fossil fuel again, just as we know, I've mentioned earlier, the first picture we have here is coal. Having made coal being from excavation processes that are taking place, and oil and gas mining teams like ourselves, engineers, we go and we extract this coal, we extract oil and gas, and then we put them in furnaces for combustion. And that is where, will I say, the blessing or the curse is in, because as we get energy out of this fossil fuel, there's also another part that is undesirable, which is the CO emissions or the emissions that come out of these processes. And as you can see from this second part, is a typical refinery where you have furnace that is already blowing fire from here, and emission into the environment, which is not a very desirable outcome. And the impact today on the environment, on the ozone layer, on climate change is something that we also need to look into. Part of fossil fuels, when they have been processed, is oil that we get here for our vehicles, and there are a lot of other byproducts that we all have from fossil fuel. So that is the good part of it. Going to the importance of fossil fuel in the Nigerian economy, I'll be narrowing down to oil, gas, and maybe coal in our own expectations. So we see where Nigerians sit in the global fossil fuel business. In terms of oil, in terms of gas, Nigeria is a major player. In fact, there's been some argument in terms of Africa, our continent, if Nigeria is number one or number two. But again, those conversations are currently going where places like Angola sometimes comes up in terms of oil production and oil reserves. But again, Nigeria plays a very important role in the fossil fuel business in Africa and entire world as number 10, which gives us a lot of recognition. In terms of importance of Nigerian economy, I've touched on that already. Oil and gas is very important in our global supply of oil and gas, in enriching many nations like China and many other countries in Europe, where our product gets into. That is why when our pipelines are having a lot of issues impacting on the entire Nigerian economy. And we have major players also in the industry like Shell, Total, Mobil, a lot of other AJIP, and also in terms of regulations, we have NDPRO, NUPRC, NETSI, NCDMB, and Co. These are all players that have somehow in the fossil fuel business, they have an impact on what happens in the Nigerian economy. Fossil fuel consumption, because it's very, very important. There's a lot of consumption of fossil fuel because energy generally, conventional energy comes from fossil fuel. When I say conventional energy, I mean the energy required daily to power our houses, to power our cars, to run our generators, to do virtually everything that we do, even heating in civilized countries like the UK and many other places. Fossil fuel play very, very, very important roles in homes where gas is used for heating in their houses. So in terms of the global outlook, demand and supply, because why is fossil fuel important? There's a global demand for fossil fuels to run different economies. And in terms of how it's going, in terms of OECD countries, we are seeing that the consumption of energy is really going high on the daily issues. And as we go ahead, we'll talk about energy crisis, where we don't have as much energy that is required today to power most nations, which is the reason why beyond fossil fuel, we're going to renewables and to see how we can get alternative sources of energy. Global energy demand in terms of continents, China is leading because they have a lot of industries. Industrialization in China is at its peak. So we're having consumption. If you look at the chart I have on the screen, you have China being major player or major consumer in terms of fossil fuel or energy generally. We also have other Asian countries. We have Africa and the rest of the world. So fossil fuel play a very important part. And those of us that are here, eventually we'll see where we all play, not just as Nigeria, but as individuals in the energy sector. Again, I've talked about global energy, fossil fuel. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you, sir.
Okay, there was a glitch I observed. So, in terms of global fossil fuel, we want to narrow into crude and gas, where we also play a very, very huge part. This is where we generate as much resources as a country. As Nigeria, we cannot ignore fossil fuel. We cannot ignore because we generate a lot of revenue. As of today, probably the figure is a bit higher than this, higher than 83. We're playing around that band of $75 to $85 price per barrel. And if we're able to do our 2.5 million mark on a daily basis, you can imagine what Nigeria is going home with. And so we can't play with that sector at all. But again, in terms of the revenues we get out of it, this is not the only thing that we also need to look into. The impact of this fossil fuel on the environment is something that we cannot downplay, or the health of human beings. Sometime I was living in Port Harcourt, Nigeria, and there was an issue that they call black suits. I don't know if some of you might know about that. We've had black suits seriously in River State there as at that time. And one of the causes of it is from hydrocarbon activities. And that leaves a lot of black particles on the cars or on things you leave outside of the house. And we inhale all of those particles, and they have negative impact on our environment. So fossil fuel related activities is having a negative impact on the environment, and it has become a major issue even on the global scene, where the likes of United Nations are talking on how we can improve use of fossil fuel or look for alternative energy sources, because population of the world is increasing, more houses are built, more infrastructure is being built, AI and co coming into play. So that means that energy consumption will continue to increase. How do we manage that? Because fossil fuel doesn't have an endless, it's a natural, it's of natural source. So there will be a time where the fossil fuel, or is projected that fossil fuel will finish, and what will be the next energy sources. So there's this line of thought to look at into other energy sources and renewable energies. I'll touch on that as we go ahead again. And so that when fossil fuels are no more, or because of their negative impact, we have other sources of energy that we can use to drive the world and drive our economy. Again, impact on fossil fuel on health. And we've had a lot of countries have CO2 emissions, which is the major impact that we have, because it depletes the ozone layer. And beyond that, also it has a lot of negative impact. So in terms of global emission, carbon dioxide is one of the emissions that we have. If you look at this chart we have here, we also have carbon dioxide, we have methane, and a lot of other emissions that are coming that are detrimental to the health. And mainly, this comes from incomplete combustion. And as engineers, that's one of the things we try to deal with. When you have fossil fuel being used in some of the engines that we use, we have incomplete combustion. And what is the release from that? Carbon monoxide. It goes into the environment. It begins to impact on the environment negatively. And as an engineer, we're looking to develop better engines, better equipment that can deal with fossil fuel, having cleaner gases. In fact, that's where we're going to want to have cleaner gases that have only hydrocarbon, and then when we burn them, we get complete combustion, because it's incomplete combustion that actually causes the emissions and dangerous gas that we inhale in our houses. Even in some time when we had lanterns being used, we have some families when they use lanterns, they suffocate and all that. That's caused by carbon monoxide being inhaled by them. All right, let's go to the impact of fossil fuel in terms of environmental and politics. Fossil fuel also has a very negative impact when it comes to the environment. Like you can see here, we have a lot of case studies already. The lawyers will know the Ogoni cases there. There are many classic cases that we have where oil spillage are issues. In fact, in Nigeria, it has become a daily issue where pipelines are being punctured everywhere already, in terms of politics, in terms of people trying to collect their natural rights, as they call it, from the Nigerian sector, or in the global scene where we have the Russia-Ukraine war, which has an undertone of politics and energy in it. Again, all these are the impact of fossil fuel on our daily lives. Because of the negative impact of incomplete combustion of fossil fuel, there's been a lot of conversations around climate change and environmental policies being made on a global scale. Like I mentioned, United Nations have had several other calls on how we can properly use fossil fuels and make an impact on it. And it's a big deal today, and will continue to be a big deal. There's been several calls to action globally on fossil fuel and energy generally, on how we're going to manage all this, because the price of energy is also going up again, and alternatives and need for alternatives is very, very important at this point. I'll touch on overview of the legal perspective of the energy ecosystem and fossil fuel, just so because I know that there are a lot of lawyers on this place again. There are several legal frameworks that are required again in understanding the fossil fuel industry as you guys go along, because from the previous sessions we've had, I've seen that a lot of people are just interested in energy industry. How does this impact the legal profession, and how can I be an energy lawyer? I use myself as an example, currently working in oil and gas industry. We have secretaries, we have a legal team that helps us to manage compliance and issues. And that's where all of you come in, because there are compliance issues on how we follow policies in environmental policies, NUPRC policies, that's the commission, also the authority policies. And that's where lawyers come in, because we have the Nigeria energy laws that are currently being used as guide or as framework for oil and gas companies. And it's the lawyers that will go in, read this regulation, and interpret them to oil and gas companies to help them to guide their operations. So that's another very, very important area where lawyers are very, very important, and they help in in the energy sector. Again, issue of overview of the legal perspective of the energy ecosystem and fossil fuel. I want to talk about human rights issues when it comes to the fossil fuel, because energy companies are generally going to mine fossil fuel in different environments. We've seen issues where human rights is being violated because energy infrastructures are being built generally. And again, that's where lawyers will come in again to intervene, either for the communities or for the oil and gas companies, to see how they can help them stay afloat, or interpret the law and see how they can coexist in trying to ensure that things work for these oil and gas companies. I want to step down here for my other mentors to probably zero in more on this the legal perspective, and to talk more on career development. That's one area I wanted to talk about again. Professional development opportunities for young lawyers that are coming up, and how they can embrace the energy industry, fossil fuels, and how they can really be of help to develop their careers. And they can play a niche, not to go the direction that we have gone in the past, but also to create win-win situations between energy companies, fossil fuel consumption, and as well and the future, and how they can ensure that things are done properly, and the conflicts that we're currently having, both on a local scale and on a global scale, is being managed by intelligent lawyers. And I believe on this call, we've been able to encourage and to stimulate certain young professionals to look beyond and to delve into the energy industry and to make the best out of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Okeogene, for helping us run through, just giving us your own overview of the energy industry. I'm sure our mentees were able to pick a few things from your presentation, and also they were able to see that the fossil fuel industry has its very, very beneficial aspects to us as a people. It's our economy, and also the harmful side, and what needs to be done to regulate that sector. So we'll be going over to our next mentor. Okay, I would like to call on Miss Obo. Obo, if she's still with us, please, I would also like to hear from you. What are your thoughts, your perspective about the fossil fuel industry?
Hi.
Yes, Mark. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Hello. Yeah, so thanks again to the JIIPCC team and to everyone. I think Oke has done a fantastic job. I wasn't expecting such a deep dive into the issues already. I thought we'll just start with ABCs of the fossil fuel industry, but he's really, I think just cut through the chase to some of the real issues that companies in this sector are facing. At this point, I feel like maybe most of my comments will come in after we've listened to the presentations given by the mentees. But I know kept raising so many legal issues. requiring our input. I know that there is a particular session that deals with compliance, that deals with oil and gas, like the regulatory framework and all. So I'm sure we can go into a bit more detail on the legal aspects of the fossil fuel industry, maybe in Nigeria and to some extent globally. We can deal with those issues then as well. But just my general comments, he's already spoken about like the markets, the nature of the fossil fuel markets, what are the products, involved in the fossil fuel markets, the coal, the oil and gas. Of course, when we come to Nigeria, although we have coal reserves and all, the major driver for us from the economic perspective would be oil and gas, or gas and oil, depending on what angle you're looking at. The market, again, made up of big players. It's not a sector that you just wake up and get into. It's highly regulated, and it's capital intensive. So you're talking millions upon millions and hundreds of millions of dollars to develop, your asset, infrastructure and all that. But like, basic economics, high risk, high reward. So you could drill a well, maybe spend 70 million and you could meet a dry hole and your 70 million just goes down the drain. But you could drill that well and, you've done, your proper geological studies and it works well. You've planned your well properly and, you hit it big and you're able to recover your investment and some. So it's a sector that is very technical. The risk is high, very high, and the rewards are high as well. And I think the point Oke was making when he spoke about human rights was more around how do we share these rewards? Is there a regulatory framework that ensures some equitable sharing of these rewards between the internal and external stakeholders of the company? So those are issues that I don't think we would ever solve, but at least those are issues that we should be able to agree on the principles, and all stakeholders should be able to work together to align their actions along those lines. On the aspect of like sustainability and energy transition, I feel, and I have the numbers here as well. When you look at like maybe OPEC numbers, of course, you would expect OPEC to be a bit partial because it's data provided by oil producing countries. But generally, the data still shows that oil and gas will continue to play a major role in the global energy mix. So that means for countries like Nigeria that are oil producing countries, the development of oil and gas resources will continue to be a key economic driver for us as a nation. From, just industry discussions and all, the real issue will then be around corporate responsibility and optimizing the production process of companies or the development processes of companies to ensure that there is greater respect and regard for the environmental effects of our operations. So I feel that's the angle development of fossil fuel, whether it's coal, whether it's oil and gas. In fact, the word on coal is like the dirtiest of that's from my own, is like the dirtiest of all the fossil fuels. So by the time you move from oil and you move to gas, you begin to get like cleaner options if you're looking at the energy sources on like a ladder and you're moving from an unsustainable or unrenewable to energy sources that are a bit more renewable and cleaner, then you'll be transiting from a coal to an oil or to a gas environment. Yeah, so I think those are just the preliminary points I would like to make. I think it's an important discussion to be had, and I know that a couple of sessions along the line will be dealing with the sustainability issues, energy transition issues. But I also just wanted to put a note here to thank the JIIPCC team. It's an important conversation to be had. It's important for us to understand the issues both from a technical, and I guess from an economic, realistic view as well of the impact that fossil fuel or oil and gas plays in the economy, for energy security, and just to drive, economic activity within countries in Africa, within a country like Nigeria. We can't be talking about abandoning what we have. Rather, we should be thinking about how can we make good what we have and make it good and make it work for us. So we need to be weaving our own story and our own narrative around this energy security, sustainability, transition debate. So those are just my preliminary comments, since we're just doing the overview of the oil and gas or the fossil fuel industry. I'm keen to listen to what the mentees have to say and the presentations, and then we can take up the discussions from there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ma. We are really grateful for your insights into the fossil fuel industry. We are grateful for your comments. Thank you to our mentees also that are also engaging. They are also reacting, right? So we'll be having our third mentor, Mr. Etsulam, sir. Please also, can you help also do justice to today's topic, sir? Yes, sir, we are happy to have you around, sir.
Good day, everyone. Can you hear me?
Good day, sir. We can hear you, sir.
Okay, great. Very well. I want to also greet other mentors that have been part of this program for a while. If you all know, I've been part of the JIIPCC industry mentors for a while. And in spite of my tight schedules, I try to make sure. Today, I just flew into Nigeria from where I work in the Middle East, and I've just had to couple myself off to be able to catch up with this meeting. And it's how precious it is. The JIIPCC team is to me generally, and all the mentees. I also want to thank Okoegene. He has done a lot. Generally, I'm more of a technical person in terms of the oil and gas industry. And so I will share briefly, basically, on the fossil fuel industry in terms of understanding the basic dynamics of how the operations and how the value chain looks like. We understand generally that the world is transitioning in terms of the energy mix. It's very important. I'm a very core proponent of the oil and gas industry and fossil fuel industry in terms of decarbonizing to be able to ensure that we remain sustainable in operations. The OPEC would not want to give up in terms of producing the oil and gas to be able to meet up global energy demand. Global energy demand is going to be increasing as much as possible. So I want to thank the other mentees and also the mentors generally that have spoken before me. I'm going to just make a slide share. Deep down already has been discussed, but more of the technical, briefly, I will share then. This will, okay, just a minute, let me share my screen. Okay. All right, once again, just a brief overview. I'm not going to take much of our time because the mentees need to speak out and we're able to contribute generally. So as we all know, the fossil fuel industry comprises of coal, natural gas, and oil, which is a very popular product that we use in our daily activities. I mean, if you look around you where you're sitting at home, then you will see products of oil and gas, fossil fuels that are being used daily. And we are also aware that environmentalists and also the young generation today thinks that more of the use of oil and gas and the other fossil fuels should be reduced to ensure that we have a better energy mix. So I will just go briefly as an introduction. What do we imply by fossil fuel generally? Okay. So there are non-renewable energy sources. Core fossil fuels you look at are coal, natural gas, and crude oil, which is also called petroleum. These are basics that are for fossil fuels that are naturally occurring and non-renewable. You can't use them over again. They are being used and exhausted at a go. So that's why we call them non-renewable energy sources. I'm also going to ask us, why do we actually want to be using fossil fuels? Well, it's help us to fossil fuel to energy required to propel our cars. And today we have a lot of gasoline cars, and some major countries within the OECD and also the global north is pushing for end of the use of combustion engines in cars. So we're talking of moving into electric vehicles and hydrogen fuels propelled vehicles. So we use it for power generation, also keep our lights on in our homes. Even today, oil and gas serve as about 80% of our energy needs. This is just common. I'm just being basic in terms of what the fossil fuel is all about. Just laying a foundation for what others will build on. So this is a bit old, but if you look at the global final energy mix, you'll be able to see that in 2000, if you look at it, oil has about 2020 rather, you will see that oil has about 38.7% of the global energy mix. This should have reduced a bit in compared to today's figures. Natural gas, 16.5%. For coal, you have around 9.7%. In terms of electricity generation, you look at 20.5%, and heat is 3.2%. So for biofuels and waste, in terms of the final energy consumption, you look at 11.5%. So for world electricity generation, if you look at by fuels, if you just stop by the right-hand side of my presentation, you will see that fossil fuel has about 61.4%. If you break down by fossil fuel, you will see that coal 36%, and then you're just going to see hydro, solar, wind, nuclear. Renewables are actually gaining momentum in the global energy mix. So for why I share this is to let us understand that in spite of the fact that we are transitioning to renewables, the oil and gas as well as other fossils remain very paramount in the energy mix. To decarbonize, it will take us about 9.5 trillion US dollars by 2050 to be able to decarbonize the global energy mix. So it's a lot of money, and oil and gas, fossil fuels will remain very effective and paramount within some decades to come. So we should not think that because of the fact that we are transitioning and we propose for environmental sustainability, we are going to abandon what we have. If we look at the context of Nigeria, Nigeria has a lot of oil reserves and natural gas reserves. Because of the Russian war today and with Ukraine, you see that the demand for natural gas for Europe, which was a major source from Russia, has been cut off. And there is also a global demand to look for alternative gas supplies. And recently, you will see that there has been push to Nigeria, push to Angola, push to Congo, and other African, Namibia, Mozambique, and other African countries that are rich in natural gas. So Nigeria as a whole should be able to optimize the use of natural gas. Okay, let's briefly go into the oil value chain. I'm just going to show briefly about the oil value chain from exploration down to consumption. So if you look at the diagram, you could see that exploration will have to do with sourcing for oil and gas deposits. So when an oil company gives out contract into an exploration company, gets involved using seismic offshore and onshore to be able to source oil and gas. It goes into the stage of production. You have a wellhead as well as a beam pump. In the US, Okegene said this, you have this beam pump, and we used to call them like, you have this kind of horse head shape. And then the crude oil is going to be processed, which is, so the exploration and production aspect is the upstream business. And you have the midstream, which has to do with transportation and storage. And midstream LNG processing has to come into this also. Then you have the refinery and marketing and chemicals, where we see recently that then there has been pushed so much with the current commissioning of the Dangote refinery. Also, rehabilitation works are going into completion for Port Harcourt refinery and other refineries in Nigeria to be able to see how we can be stop the imports of petroleum products. And for the natural gas production, get to processing, transportation, as well as marketing. So I will share this slide. You will be able to understand the value chain for oil. So let's just take a look at a crude oil barrel. What does it really take in a crude oil barrel? So you can get products, about 3% of asphalt, 4% of liquefied petroleum, have 10% of jet fuel, other products, and diesel and heating oil. Gasoline, which is our petrol, which is the popular product for petroleum, is 47%, which is very important in terms of our daily transportation. So some of the uses you could see daily in our lives for crude oil, medicines, toiletries, sports equipment, toothbrush, electronics, candles. So if you look at this, when we talk about decarbonizing, when we talk about transition, and how are we going to replace these things with renewables, it's going to cost a lot. And sustainable practices need to be put in place for you to achieve this. So you understand that there's a huge grip of fossil fuel on the global economy and global use of resources. I'll go to natural gas value chain in terms of from the oil and gas well. We have gases that comes from oil and gas wells are normally associated gas. And Nigeria has been flaring a lot in terms of associated gas because of lack of infrastructure and investment into gas use. So this has been happening over a while. We thank God for the likes of the Nigerian LNG project that have been up for more than decades. So this helps in terms of power generation, using for our daily lives, industrial use, for community and homes. And we have LNG storage. So I will not explain much so that I won't take much of our time so that we can go further. So natural gas is for heating, for industry, and for transport. Generally, we have the gas to power issues, and some of us are very mentors here, are experts in the gas to power and electricity generation industry. So I'm not too much into this, but you could see in terms of exploration of gas, get into processing, gas pricing mechanism, and gas to generation, utilities, and all of that. You could see in terms why I shared this. You will see what happens is that there are some losses in terms of within the valuation of gas to power. You have well-left debt, inadequate infrastructure, completion delays, transition losses, and sabotage. So some of these things, collection losses, pricing distortions, these are things that happen in terms of the gas to power markets. The coal value chain, very important. Same thing, mining operations, processing, inventory. We go to rail, ports, global shipping, and being introduced into the market. So these are the value chains for coal. In terms of the use of coal, I will actually share what coal is being used for. For coke, which is the solid part of coal, it is used to make iron and other metals. If also look at for the liquid coal, you have coal tar, which is used to make dyes, drugs, and perfume. We also use it for construction works. And coal gas, we have a coal methane gas used for fuel and in industries, for power generation and all of this. So countries like India and China are still investing and putting more money into building coal gas powered plants to be able to see how they can compete in reducing the reliance also on heavy heating oils. So coal will still play a big role. There is push to decarbonize. China is trying to move into more of natural gas to be able to help reduce the further reliance on coal. In conclusion, I would like to say that there are several options that exist to transition away from the fossil fuel economy. We have hydropower, biomass, wind, geothermal, solar energy, which are reliable energy sources, and very much looking at the point whereby we would say, okay, the world does no longer need the fossil fuel. Partly, I believe, post-2050, there's still reliance on fossil fuels, and though within the global energy mix, there will be significant reductions. But to be able to achieve this, there's going to be serious collaborations within the government agencies, investors. And one thing that's actually propelling so much, like we try to see, there's this dynamics now. I use a case for British Petroleum as an example. The previous CEO, who was more of a green man, ended up at some point, because investors started losing in terms of the profits that gained for British Petroleum. They started recently, within the last 2 years, started going off again in terms of investment into renewables. Shell came up with an idea now with the new CEO. They are trying to reduce a lot in terms of investment in renewable portfolio because they are not having return. And this is a challenge for how oil companies are going to pivot in the current energy transition. I think I will have to stop here for other mentors to be able to share. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Etsulam, for that very insightful session from you. We thank you for sharing your screen and also helping us do justice to today's subject matter. I hope everyone can hear me. Please, can anyone hear me? Am I audible?
I can hear you.
Yes, you are.
Yes, you are.
Or thank you very much.
I'll drop the slide on the chat.
Yes, sir. That would be really appreciated, sir. Thank you so much, sir. We'll be having our last but not least of our mentors, Mr. Dayo, sir. We also want to hear from you, sir, as regards today's subject matter. What are your own thoughts and perspectives, sir?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And with thanks to the previous mentors who have spoken. The good thing when you have qualified mentors, and kudos to JPIC, you've got very good ones. They've made my job coming last easy because they've covered maybe 70% of what I wanted to speak upon. So what I would like to focus on is maybe the last 30%. Of what I wanted to do, which I'm sure the mentors also wanted to speak upon as well. I believe a key part of mentorship is education, but guidance regarding the industry as well. So I would like to discuss briefly, we have either people who are in university, just out of university, or in their early careers. How do you get into the energy industry? How do you prepare yourself? How do you differentiate? And I'll start with differentiation. The oil and gas industry, the energy industry, as we like to call ourselves nowadays, is a very, very, very competitive industry. A number of people want to be in oil and gas. And I remember when I started practicing law quite a while ago, it's maybe 25 years now, everybody wanted to be an oil and gas lawyer, or everybody wanted to work in oil and gas. To be able to do this, you have to start planning for that career and differentiating yourself from the very beginning. It's simple, relative things like joining JPIC, but it's also deliberate, conscientious effort on your part. Now, where do I start from? From an educational point of view, okay? Because oil and gas, the industry is competitive, highly so, what you do need to recognize is that a very big differentiator for a lot of employers and hiring, which I've done both as working in a law firm and working in-house, is what are the grades? Do you understand? Oil and gas companies, oil and gas law firms are always looking for highly motivated people who have this process academically. Now, I'm going to say something. You want to be able to process academically, but you don't want to think like it, because it's a very, it's a very, what's the word I want to use? It's a very commercial endeavor. And what I mean by you want to excel academically, because a number of organizations, they have a cutoff point. Apologies, I got cut off. You know what? Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay. Did I get cut off from your side or my side?
Yes, you got cut off from your side, sir. But
Okay,
we can hear you
apologies.
clearly now.
Okay, good. Apologies for that. So in that commercialization, in that competition, a lot of organizations have a weeding process. whereby they use grades at first. Now, not everyone will excel academically. And I don't point any fingers at anybody but myself. I got a 2-2 in university. And even that, my dean of law had to call me and say, if you don't pick it up, you're going to get a 3rd class. So it doesn't mean that if you're not somebody that gets a 2-1 or 1st class, you cannot enter the oil and gas industry. But you must recognize that if you have the ability and you do not push yourself towards getting that, you're making it harder for you to get into the oil and gas industry. So we take it aside from academia, then what are the extra things you're doing? If there is one word, and I'll drop maybe 2 or 3, but the most important word for creating a career in the energy industry is differentiation. Okay, differentiation. How are you different from the next person who wants the same job that you do have? So you start off with academic, if you can. If not, you do the best you can. If you are academically proficient and if you're not as academically strong, you still need to do the next thing I am speaking upon, which is have these mentor programs. There are quite a number of them, but what other educational fortifications are you giving yourself through online courses, which were non-existent when I was coming up? You had to pay and travel somewhere or attend in physical form. These training courses, these seminars, which were helping to build up your resume. Now, and sorry if I sound like an old man, it's too easy for you to not say that you do not have extra qualifications apart from your basic, and that's what it is. Even if you have a 1st class, there are thousands of people with a 1st class. So your basic academia is the baseline. You need to now go on their online free resources that would allow you to gain additional knowledge, because it does 2 things. It gives you further insight. I very much like the presentation by Mr. Ogbehe, and I liked and see that when Mr. Itula was speaking, that determination of he's coming in from the Middle East, he's still trying to give back by mentoring. You have to, and you owe it to yourself, to look for these online resources, look for the physical ones. Not everyone has the financial wherewithal to pay for these things, but then more than enough free online resources that help bolster both your knowledge of the industry and academic profile. Let me tell you why. Because when you're a recruiting or hiring manager, which I have done, which I still do at my law firm, you quickly look, okay, this person has a 1st class. The mistake, and that's why I tell you, if you work smart, even if you don't have a 1st class, you will exceed somebody that has a 1st class, right? If you do have a 1st class and you listen and work smart, you will stand out above all those others that have a 1st class. When I see an application and they say, I got a 1st class in University of X and I got a 1st class in law school, then I read the rest and it sounds like a professor. There's nothing wrong with a professor, but I work in a very commercial business. If I see somebody that says, that right, I got a 2-2, and in addition to that, I have certifications in this, I will take that 2-2 person, because I'm like, this person gets it. They've gone over and beyond what is the minimum that is expected. The 1st class person is still very strong, but the 2-2 person has gauged the market and has bolstered their position, right? After that, academic and somewhat quasi or professional fortification you've given to your academia, then how do you actually get into the business? It's tough, it's hard. Your mentors here will tell you, I worked in-house, but everyone else of the mentors today is actually working in-house. Some may have had it easy, but they'll tell you it's a very, very, very competitive market. So what you have to do is where you can, and I recognize it's a lot harder now. I wanted to be an oil and gas lawyer. I went to an oil and gas firm, right? You have to fight, struggle your way into these companies. Sometimes you might not get the big one, you get a small one, and you build up your credits. Your credits is short for credentials. You build up your credentials. If you remember that your career is it's a journey, right? It's a jog, not a marathon. And that's one other thing that I want to tell a lot of the younger people here. The second thing I'll say, write it down. For those of you who are writing, when people say, oh, well, you're this big lawyer, you're this, I said it takes 10 to 15 years to become an overnight success, okay? As I sit before you this Saturday morning, I've been practicing law. I got out of university in 1999, right? I got out of law school in 2000. It took a while. I struggled. Do you understand? But if you know this is what you want to do and you keep at it, it eventually pays off. So you have to realize that you might be lucky and get a nice, snazzy job in a big oil and gas company, but you might not. What does that look like? It means if you want to work in oil and gas and the opportunity you have is in midstream, which is the energy industry is divided into downstream, midstream, and upstream. Upstream is your oil and gas producers like the Shells, ExxonMobils, and whatnot. But even 25 years ago, they were the best paying places where everybody wanted to work in, right? 1 in 100 was successful in applying, and that's at a certain level. It was usually 1 in 10,000. So if you can't get into a Shell or an ExxonMobil or a Chevron, then they're the indigenous companies. If you can't get into the indigenous companies, then you're looking at, so we're talking upstream, midstream, basically, and generally are gas producing companies, right? Or gas utilization companies. What has happened over the years now is that a number of upstream and midstream companies are one and the same, okay? Because of what we in the industry have called consolidation, you would have a group company that has an upstream division and a midstream division, but sometimes it's downstream. What is downstream? Downstream is like the Owandos, is like the MRS, even though they've gone into the midstream and upstream as well. So what I'm saying is sometimes you just have to get into the industry anyhow you can. There are avenues into the oil and gas industry through what we call service companies, right? Okay, so I see our moderator is on, so I'll wrap it up. They are what we call service industries. These are oil and gas companies that provide services, right, to the upstream, midstream, and downstream. And as an engineer, as a lawyer, you can go into these companies, start building up your knowledge, building up your experience, and those jobs that you were not able to get in the first 3 to 5 years of your application, of your career, after working in these companies, you will be better served, better qualified to be able to apply to these companies. So I will end on that point and hand back over to our moderator. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Very, very insightful. Just helping us to just challenge our mentees on how exactly they would go about if they want to enter or build a career in the energy industry, for which I'm sure a lot of them registered for this program to receive a basics from our mentors. So thank you so much to our mentors for their overview on today's topic on the fossil fuel industry. I will be going over to our mentees now, right? Group 1 and Group 2, please. Group 1, it's time for presentation. Please, we would like to have the group presenter for Group 1 make presentations on behalf of Group 1. Your time is 7 minutes for presentation. Please, we would like that to be very fast so that we can also have comments and feedbacks from our mentors. So, Group 1, please, the floor is yours. Come and make a presentation. Okay, can members of Group 1 hear me?
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now, Mr. Atta.
All right, so I'm trying to share my screen. I want to confirm if my screen is visible.
Yes, your screen is visible.
Right, so it's afternoon. Good afternoon to our mentors and fellow mentees. So we're going to do a presentation. We're going to do a presentation on the global fossil fuel industry, and a lot of it has been, given by the mentors who spoke earlier, and so we just also run through the presentation. Fossil fuel, basically, if you remember, before the Industrial Revolution, the forefathers or parents or so rely on other sources of energy like mozu, energy, burning of biomass, such as crops and the rest. But with the Industrial Revolution, there was a breakthrough through the discovery of fossil fuel and then the rising of oil giants like the Saudi Arabia, in the US also, as well. So we have the fossil fuel coming on board. And for a very long time, it has shaped the global economy and providing for what runs the economy. So basically, fossil fuels are energy producing biological materials that are found under the earth crust from the decomposition of animals and plants formed hundreds of millions years ago. They consist of elements such as sulfur, hydrogen, and nitrogen. Basically, in terms of forms and classification, majorly they are classified into petroleum, which is the oil, and of course, coal and natural gas. And there are no renewable sources of energy. In our research, we'll try to look at countries that are involved in the industry. Basically, we saw that there are several countries that are involved in both in producing and production and consumption of fossil fuel. As of 2019, the United States of America was the world's biggest producer of fossil fuel, producing almost 20%. And then it also, in terms of consumption, is also fossil fuel, followed by other countries like Australia. What are the uses of fossil fuel? Uses, for example, the petroleum is automobiles and vehicles. It is also used in production of electricity. For coal, it's generated. Some of the components can be used in making medication. Whereas gas is used in air conditioning, also in our cooking stoves. It can also be used in making of metals and fertilizer production. What are the advantages of fossil fuels? We understand that due to its high energy density, there are powerful fuel sources that can be used, in preparing some machines and the rest. They're reliable and generate power, and I think that is the reason for which they are, widely available, and that is the reason why their consumption is still very high even up to today. The discussions are ongoing on energy transitioning. Despite its importance, fossil fuel is important. There are also challenges that comes with that. Fossil fuel release carbon dioxide when they are burned, and then they are not renewable. I think one of the mentors did mention the fact that there is a projection that the fuel the fossil fuel we have may run into extinct. There's a projection that it may finish up because it's non renewable and it takes a longer time to produce it. So it's one of the fears. And then it has both economic, environmental and health hazards that it pose to the environment and the people and the rest. So what are the alternative energy sources? We have solar energy, wind energy, hydro power, and bioenergy, and to mention but a few. In conclusion, the world continues to depend heavily on fossil fuel. according to some statistics that we've gotten, it's still fossil fuel still accounts for about 82% of the global energy usage. Even as discussions and deliberations and plans are underway in place for finding alternative sources, we still find out that there's so much dependency on that, which there is fear whether the projections and the directions of global roundtable discussion as to cutting down fuel consumptions and net zero emissions of carbon by 2060, whether it's going to be possible. But for us, we think more of collaborations and discussions between nations, and especially oil producing countries, would do a very great job in ensuring that the goal of cutting down the emissions are actualized. It's not going to be easy because of the dependency and the impact it had both economically on countries that produces it. So that's that for our presentation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Atta. Right, well done to you, and well done to the entire Group One for putting together that presentation. I want to see Group One mentees also congratulate Mr. Atta for a smooth presentation that was made and done in time. Right, so please, we also like to have Group Two just come up and make their presentation so that we can have general feedback from our from our mentors. So, Group Two, are you guys with us? Are there Group Two members here? Right, the Group Two
Yes, we are
presenter, please
here.
go ahead and make your presentation.
Okay. Good afternoon, the whole house. Please, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Good afternoon, Sekirat.
Good afternoon. My name is Shakira Atashafa. I will be the presenter for Group Energy Class Group 2 for today. Please hold on, I'm trying to share my slide. Yeah. So please, can you see my slide?
Not yet.
Okay. Sorry. Yes, like I rightly said, the topic for today is sorry. The topic for today is on fossil fuel, an overview of the global fossil fuel industry. Our table of contents is going to include introduction of fossil fuel industry, impact of the fossil fuel industry, as well as challenges of the industry and the way forward. So I don't know what exactly is wrong. Please give me some minutes. Sorry, please. I
Please,
don't
you
know if
can
I
go ahead.
can.
You can go ahead and start the
Okay.
presentation without sharing.
Okay, thank you. So, like I rightly said, our table of contents is going to include the introduction of the fossil fuel industry, the impact of the fossil fuel industry, the challenges in the industry, as well as the way forward. Generally speaking, fossil fuels are hydrocarbon materials that contain remnants that are made from earth crust, basically from the remains of dead plants and animals that are extracted and buried as fuel. And then the major examples of, we have three major categories of fossil fuel, which are coal, oil, and gas. Although we have other types of fossil fuels, which include bitumen, tarsans, and some other materials. Fossil fuels primarily comprise of carbon, hydrogen, sulfur, nitrogen, oxygen, and mineral materials. Um, fossil fuels are not renewable. They are not renewable materials. And the two major fossil fuel industries globally the coal industry as well as the oil and gas industry. Talking about the coal industry, we have three key major players in the global coal industry, and the largest of them is the company PHB Bank, which has a market cap of about 107.1 billion US dollars and total assets of about $102.3 billion. While the second largest key player is the British Australian company by name Rio Tinto Group, and the third on the list is a Chinese state-owned China Central Energy Company Limited. So apart from the coal industry, we also have the oil and gas industry as one of the major industry in the fossil fuel industry, and it has three major components. We have the upstream. I'm talking about the oil and gas industry now. Please, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you. The oil and gas industry has three major components. We have the upstream, we have the midstream, and the downstream. The upstream segment borders majorly on exploration and production, which is usually referred to as E&P. This includes the search for underwater, the underground, natural gas field, or crude oil. And it also includes the activities of drilling of exploration wells and drilling into established wells to recover oil and gas. While the midstream segment entails, it involves the transportation, the processing of oil and gas, as well as the storage. The third segment of the oil and gas industry is the downstream sector, the downstream segment, which involves the purification of natural gas, refining of crude oil, and the commercial distribution of oil and gas products to consumers and end users. I've talked about the other types of fossil fuel. So now talking about the key players in the oil and gas industry, there are a good number of companies, a good number of major key players. But the top companies in the oil and gas sector include the Saudi Arabia Oil Company, the China Petroleum and Chemical, we have Chevron Corporation, we have Total Energies, Shell PLC, and ExxonMobil. So now going to the economic impact of the fossil fuel industry, it has some impact, both positive and negative. But the economic impact is that one of the key things is that it's a good source of revenue for the government, and it's also a good source of energy for people, for us generally, for human beings, and it's also a means of job creation. It's also, like I said earlier, the very first impact is that it's a good source of revenue. So it gives in for prosperous economy and a revitalized manufacturing sector. Although it has, like I said earlier, that it has both positive and negative impact. So it is not without challenges. The fossil fuel industry also has its own challenges, and the topmost of the challenges is environmental degradation, and then that it includes high cost of production. So dwelling more on the environmental degradation, that we are all aware that it pollutes the environment, and that's the major thing. So the pollution, talk about the pollution aspect of it. So it's an instance of the environmental degradation. And then we also talk about the way forward from the major challenges that are being faced by the fossil fuel industry. And part of the way forward that we recommended in our group is that the industry has to improve on environmental footprint to meet increasingly stringent standards, so that the rate of pollution can be reduced. And they should work on, the sector also has to work on reduction of cost of production, So the materials, our presentation was not made from out of the blues. We got them from a couple of research, and we have references for it. And our references include Wikipedia, and as well as environmental science, a book on environmental science, problem connection and solution, written by Mila G. And eeducation.psu.edu is also one of our references. Britannica.com, insidermonkey.com is a blog. We also have all like that iq.com, as well as investopedia.com, without leaving behind www.forbes.com. And my presentation is done on behalf of the energy class group 2, which we have as our group leader Nicholas Chukwu Kanwosu, one Victoria and Duke, my humble self Shakira Tashafaolare. We also have Victoria Chiwendu Eguna, Mike Ogba, Okabo Michael, as well as Wendola. So that will be all for energy class group 2 for today. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our group presenter for the energy class. Well done. I want to see reactions from the group 2 members, and also want to say well done to the group leader who helped share screen. So we'll be having our mentors come make comments on the presentations that were made by the mentees. And we would like to start right from the top again with Mr. Okeogene. Miss, can you come and give perspective to the presentation that was made by the mentees? What are your thoughts, areas you think they should make adjustments, and some of the things you think they should further research and get involved in as regards to this topic, sir?
All right. Thank you very much. Um, Thank you very much, everyone. And thank you to the two teams for their presentation. I think good job, very good attempt at touching the fossil fuel industry. Well done to Solomon, I think for group 1, and also Sakira for group 2. I think they made a very good attempt. Talking about fossil fuel and how it has shaped the economy. That will be for group 1, Solomon. He touched on non-renewable sources of energy. He also talked about key players in the energy industry generally.
Mr. Kegner, it seems your network is having a little bit of network issue. Um, you're having a little bit of network issue. Sir, can you hear us? So are you
Okay.
with?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, we can hear you now.
Okay, let me take out my video so I can just give my feedback very quickly. Did you hear the first part, the first 2 minutes of my comments I gave?
A little bit of it, but not everything, sir.
Okay, let me just quickly go through. I said Solomon did a very good job as a presenter. He talked about fossil fuel being non-renewable. He talked about a major producers of fossil fuel being the US, Australia. I think on his plate he also had Russia, flag of Russia. He touched on the challenges, non-renewable nature of it. He talked about environmental and health hazard as some of the sources for renewable energies. And then the part I love most that I talked about is sustainability, how collaboration is the key for sustainable energy supply for the world as we go ahead. I talked about depletion of fossil fuel. So I think Solomon and Gupon did a very good job represented by Solomon. But in terms of what he might have done better, or the entire group, would be touching more on the 3 tiers of the fossil fuel business in terms of oil and gas. Some of the conversations around how the fossil fuels have gotten was not touched on, which I think is very critical in this conversation. Because if you go into fossil fuels, you know the success again to show not just as lawyers, but again just to show that you can understand or you can relate to how the processes that we go through to get the fossil fuel. I think that's another area you could have touched on generally. Also, you cannot talk about fossil fuel without talking about sustainability or renewable energy, a bit of that and the relationship, I think those are some of the things he might not have delved deep on. But again, another thing I also liked was the number of slides. One of the things I've seen in this Gypsy mentorship slides, while we know a lot of things and talk about the things that are very important, it's very talked about the part that I felt that we needed to talk about. So that would be all for group one. Quickly for group two, represented by Sikirat. Well done, Sikirat, for your presentation. I think Sikirat is a very, very good team player. She tried to carry an entire team. Portray that fact that it was a group work done. She tried to emphasize that so much at the beginning. Also at the end, she took her time to read the names of the entire crew. That would be a good one. So well done, Sikirat. I think I also want to give it to her. She took her time to talk about coal, oil and gas, though she went into narrowing on oil and gas a bit more, but she was able to touch on that. She talked about the constituent of fossil fuel, very key. She touched about that, talked about hydrocarbon, she talked about sulfur and a few other things also she mentioned. So I think I commend her for that. She also talked about coal, major players in the coal business being China and India. She tried to, put that out there so that we're able to understand that very commendable economic impact of fossil fuel. She did mention that again. Well, I mean, she had 15 slides and she took her time to go through some of this. So I think it's quite commendable. Though she didn't talk about renewable energy a bit more. That will be the downside of our presentation areas, because knowing about fossil fuel also means you going to also know alternative sources. One of the things in the entire world now we're talking about trying to veer away from fossil fuel, which in my own opinion, I don't think is the best. I think there's a way that there can be collaboration globally. Fossil fuels can be improved because they all have their own places, right? Um, One of the mentors talked about production of counterpart and investment that is required for investors, which I think is very high. So fossil fuel has a lot of place to play, and Sikira talked about that in our presentation. So kudos to both teams, I must say, for the very, very good job done in presenting their ideas. So well done. That will be my comments for both presentations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. We really do appreciate your feedback and everything you had to say concerning the presentations. We'll be going to our next mentor, Miss Ogbo. Right, Ma, if you're still with us, we would like to also hear from you. What are your thoughts and your feedbacks on the presentation that was made?
Okay, hi. So special thanks to the group one and group two teams, Solomon and Sikira. That was a very good presentation, very clear. For group one, I like the fact that you covered, technical aspects. Okay, has highlighted those aspects as well in your presentation. I think group two as well, your presentation was clear. I love the references, and all that. I think generally the feedback I have would go to the two teams. I think it was a very good presentation, but I try to think about the sources and how you got the data, that you put in that presentation. And I realized that you might need to consider, a wider reach of quality data. And I would just like to maybe draw your attention to some agencies that give like free resources on the oil and gas or the energy, actually, the energy sector. So you can check out like the OPEC, when you go to OPEC website, look for their annual reports. These guys, they have annual reports every year around the industry, around the market, around projections. Check out OPEC, check out IEA, check out EIA. I'll send some of these links to the admin, but I can assure you, by the time you take your time to read those reports, your language will change, your understanding of the sector will change, your ability to interrogate some of the themes you see or some of the comments you hear would improve. So that would just be the general feedback I would be giving the team. And I would love to see a lot more, because when you start reading reports like that, it would improve your ability to think critically, and your ability to think critically would also reflect in the content of your presentation. So that for me is just the major feedback I can give you at this point. You need to go to those reports. You need to read them. There might be a lot, but trust me, maybe you start with the executive summary, get a general idea, go through different reports, see how OPEC sees things, see how the IEA looks at this, maybe check some OECD reports, check some AU reports. You have a rounded view. So let me stop there. That's my feedback to the team.
Thank you so much, Matt, for that wonderful feedback from you. We look forward to also getting your resources so that we can, the resources you intend sharing with us, so that we can also send them over to the mentees. Last but not least, we would like to have Mr. Etulam. I think Mr. Dio is no longer with us, and we still thank him for making our time to be here. But we'd like to have Mr. Etulam also give feedback on the presentations. You're welcome, sir.
Okay. I think my previous mentors have mentioned a lot about the presentation. For me, I think over the period, just as I've been part of this program, I'm very impressed so far with the current presentations made by Group 1 and 2 in terms of the content and the size of the slides and how it's been laid out. Sometimes previous groups have not been so much. I think there's been a lot of improvement in terms of outlined a number of slides and the content layouts. And also it shows that they've been able to make an in-depth research on this topic. I understand the global perspective, and one angle, in spite of the fact that we're talking globally, we should also try to see into reasons for the African energy space so far in global perspective, and some data that has to relate with the continent, maybe Nigeria and other aspects generally, how it looks like it will be very much suitable. We are not all Europeans, just talking global perspective alone, but we should also have the mindset that what is the fossil fuel space in Africa in general. I think those data should be put in place. I also want to commend in terms of content. As regards to Group 1, Mr. Solomon did a great job, and I'm very pleased with that. And also Zakirat for Group 2, great jobs. In terms of also, I would like to say for Group 2, I didn't get so much perspective in terms of gas and natural gas as part of the fossil fuels. So can be able to delve into that a bit. And I'm very passionate about decarbonization of the fossil fuel industry. So in terms of global perspective, we understand that when we talk about the global fossil fuel industry, there is the pressure, even from COP28 in UAE last year, the push is that decarbonize. We don't want so much investment, renewable investment and development in oil and gas, and coal and all of this. So we should be able to come up with some of these ideas. In terms of data, very much important also. My previous mentor mentioned this. It's very important that I am a person that actually gets involved. I've been involved in terms of global perspective On LinkedIn, I shared almost every week daily perspective that has to do with the oil and gas. So it's very important that the organizations that she mentioned is looked at. Very important. When COP 28 result report comes out, when OPEC gives out their result, your report, go through them, executive summaries and all of this. It will help very perspectively. There are also some important courses on Coursera, Udemy, that actually talks on the oil and gas industry or international energy globally. Those are free courses you can actually do and be able to earn. And some of these things I did them way back early 2016, 2015, get some perspective. So it will help to improve your perspective globally. So the takeout is that kudos to the both teams. I'm impressed in terms of the presentation slides compared to previous energy mentorship programs with JIIPCC have been having. So I'm very impressed that there's an improvement. If this pace can be maintained further, then I think that the mentees also are doing a great job. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your feedback. We really, really do appreciate. Thank you to all our mentors. Thank you, Ms. Obo, for the resource material you shared. I'm sure our mentees will be doing well to visit them. I'll also be posting them on their WhatsApp group so that they can have access to it anytime. So we'll be going into the question and answer segment. I think officially the last segment for the class or the session rather, and we would like to take questions. I'm sure our mentees have learned quite a lot, and I'm sure even over the while they were carrying out the research, there were a few questions that were on their minds and things they would like to ask. They shared one with us. I'm sorry we didn't send any to the mentors, but we have a question that is here. But we also like to take live questions. So please, are there live questions from our mentees? So that we can get like more or further insights from our mentors as regards to today's subject matter. Please, we'll be taking live questions right now, right about now. Please, are there questions? Are there questions? Please, we want questions. We want questions. We want questions. Okay. While we wait for our mentees to ask questions, I would like to put a question out here first. All right. Concerning, okay, I can see Mr. Emmanuel. You can go ahead and ask your question before I ask mine. Mr. Emmanuel, you can go ahead and ask your question. Yeah, good afternoon. We can. Yes, we can.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Emmanuel.
Okay. First of all, I think I need to appreciate the quality of mentors. The information that they shared has been very helpful and very deep. My question in particular is concerning some of the initiatives that the nation has gone into concerning decarbonization and how visible those efforts are. I think there was a report that came across that I think concerning the Paris Agreement that those I think there's an African country that has been able to meet up with the target of decarbonizing their
sorry, Emmanuel, please can you be more audible? Can you speak out more so that we can really hear you?
Okay. My question simply is how visible is the decarbonization timeline that has been given? For example, we have we have 2060, 2070, and even as concerning Nigeria, we also have a timeline for decarbonization. So for attaining net zero. So I want to find out how visible it is within the timeline for us to actually achieve net zero and decarbonization.
Okay, thank you for that question. Yeah, I think I heard your question. So basically, you're asking if there's like a net timeline for decarbonization. If I'm not mistaken, that's what you were generally asking, right?
No, my question is about how visible the timeline is.
How
How
feasible,
much?
how feasible it is to achieve that decarbonization time?
Yes. Okay, Mr.
Yes.
Please, you can help us with that question, sir.
Okay, just to add up. So I try to like understand the question. So generally, perspective wise, in terms of some data I had from McKinsey. McKinsey is a global consultancy firm which actually supports most the energy industry. I think one important information I got was like it requires about 9.2 trillion US dollars annually to be spent on physical assets for us to be able to achieve net zero. So the timeline agreed by the United Nations and all of the parties looked at 2050 to achieve net zero, zero carbon emissions. And this is a timeline. Nigeria, we understand Nigeria, some other African countries are like, oh, 2060, China and all of that are saying that, okay, we cannot cope with the global north. I mean, the very much developed countries. So it's feasible, but it's going to require a lot of capital investments in terms of infrastructure, resources, and collaboration with investors and policymakers to be able to achieve this. Which is something that so far, if we compare with the current investments, both from governments and also private investors and equity firms globally, like companies like BlackRock who are involved in energy futures, you will see that it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. By 2050, how feasible that will be for me is probable. There is a probability that it will not. We will not be able to achieve net zero by 2050 in terms of energy demand, in terms of capital investments to be able to achieve this goal. For me, if we look at Europe, Germany actually, because of the energy crisis, ends up now where we have instances whereby renewables were able to be able to provide stable power, and sometimes retracted. Some of these countries retracted into their old code plans and just back and forth. So it's a dicey scenario for us to achieve this. But if governments and policymakers and investors will be able to put out resources in capital investment, then it's possible.
Thank
Sorry, if I can just add to what Etulan said, because that's something that is also very important to me. And in my view, and from the research I've done, at the rate we're going, when you think about the amount of investment that we need to reach, for example, Nigeria, we have a 2050 net zero plan, right? Target. At the rate we're going, at the rates of investments in decarbonize, we are not going to meet that target. If we continue with this business as usual, even our business as usual now, with maybe the regulators trying to really push oil companies to, eliminate gas flare, you have penalties here, you have gas utilization and commercialization programs. Even with all that, at the rate we're going, if we continue at this rate, at this investment rate, we are not going to meet those targets. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't do anything about it, because a no action scenario would be even worse. Yeah, so those are just conversations that we can have and have and have. And yeah, we need to match our talk with action. We need to, our investments need to follow the rhetoric that we're spinning, but most times it doesn't. When you look at the big players, the oil companies with the deep pockets, are they really invested in renewables compared to their overall portfolio? I don't think so. I don't think so. So that's why I would say we're not going to meet that target as a country. Let me speak for Nigeria. Yeah. In my
Thank you. Okay, we can still hear you, Ma.
sorry, go ahead. I'm done. I just wanted to just align with what Itulan had said around the targets. Yeah.
Oh, all right. Thank you so much, Ms. Obo, for that
Apologies
contribution, and
for
thank
my
you also,
laptop battery.
Mr. Etulan, for helping us answer that question. So, do we still have more questions? Thank you, Mr. Dio, for joining us once again.
Sorry, my laptop battery died. Apologies for that.
So sorry about that, sir. So, do we still have more questions? Okay.
So sorry. I don't have I just want to add my perspective again, slightly different from what the other mentors have said. And my perspective is this energy transition we're talking about. For me, I think a more robust plan is important. And when I say a more robust plan, I mean more time should be given for the transition to happen. But again, what is the basis for which the transition is happening? I think the goal should have been decarbonizing more or less rather than switch to renewable. Um, that's my case because in terms of reserves, Africa has a lot of reserves. And if these reserves were sitting in Europe or sitting in most of all these places where these key players that are asking for transition is, I don't think they are going to go about it the entire way. So in terms of value, they want to continue to put value on the table. And in terms of the transition that is happening, they are leading the transition technology. You understand my point? So they are pushing for this because the benefits of the transition will go to them primarily more than the African countries or other areas where these reserves sit. So I think it's time for the reserves owner to sit down again and push back on some of all these things because they have natural value given to them by God, sitting under, and somebody's just going to tell you that, oh, don't, we don't want you to use this because it has damaged the environment. Yes, we understand, but can we have better technologies that can still use these energy sources? And we've seen where these renewable sources have failed, like the example that my colleague has also put on the table to say, oh, the renewable energy sources are not able to meet what is being expected in Europe and all that. So I think these are the line of thought that we need to encourage and our regulators and and consolidate in terms of Africa and push back on some of what is things so we can get value out of natural resources that we have sitting in our own countries. Thank you.
If
Thank
I
you so
could
much,
just
sir.
add on to that as
Okay,
well.
please, sir, you can go ahead, sir.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. So to the mentees, energy transition is very much a buzzword. That time has to be taken, as was just said, and reality. So I tell my colleagues that I grew up in my career as an oil and gas lawyer, emphasis on oil. They will have to focus, and it goes to all of you, mentees, the focus will have to be on gas and renewables. However, it must be taken in context. My previous speaker made a very important point where Africa has some of the largest reserves. But even more importantly, and apologies if this point was made when I was offline, let me tell you this. Africa contributes less than 3% to global warming, which is the primary reason why we're looking towards energy transition. Africa contributes less than 3% of carbon to the atmosphere. So if Europe and America collectively contribute over 90% to global warming, then why should we be held to the same standards? Number one. Number two, a number of our mentees made a mention of coal. Coal is the largest producer of energy in China. China basically says we're going to do what we have to do when we have to do it. You might or might not know, Nigeria has a large, very large reserve of coal. We were making, albeit in the Nigerian way, efforts to develop that. And Europe came and said, this is a dirty energy. We will not fund it. We do not support it. Fun fact, my mentors, my fellow mentors would know, after the Russia-Ukraine war, the UK fired up the coal plant 2 years ago, right? So when it is to the advantage, and I'm not adopting a them versus us, but like my previous mentor said, we must be very careful in how we run with this energy transition narrative. Okay. Nigeria has 38% of hydrocarbon reserves in the entire Africa. We will transition, but it must be done logically with enough time. And most importantly, right, renewable energy sources cannot, even if you had it all at full strength now, cannot replace the energy produced by hydrocarbons or fossil fuels, to use today's theme. What you will do is you set a target, because the target must be set. You will have a transition fuel, which is gas. Gas is still 20 to 30 to 40 years of work for all of us on this call. Well, not me, because I'll be long gone by then, I hope. So you look at gas towards renewables. But I think you will struggle if you think your career or path will be solely on renewables, because as long as it's fashionable, as long as it's convenient, that will be taken. The US 15 years ago, right, were banning shale oil and shale reserves, right? When it was convenient for the US, they passed legislation to utilize it. So like my last mentor says, and this will be my last point, we must take care of the environment. We must be conscious of climate. We have to take care of the climate for our children, for future generations, but it must be in a sensible way that is not dictated by the parties that are causing the most damage to the environment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dayo, for that contribution and that perspective. And I want to also thank all our mentors who contributed on that question. Very, very insightful, very, very thought-provoking points that you all raised. So questions. We're still taking questions. And my question is primarily about, I think we made mention, or some of our mentors made mention of the issues concerning flaring, right? We've seemed to have had that for quite a while, especially within our Nigerian context. Why does it seem like this particular issue and problem doesn't want to go away? Considering the fact that there are standards and there are laws that government is trying to put in place to make sure that this particular issue is regulated. Why does it seem like it seems to keep on reappearing, no matter how much we put regulations and try to um, enforce penalties to ensure that this is no longer a challenge? Why is it that glass frame is still a problem in our oil and gas sector?
Okay, if I could go first, with all due
okay.
respect, if I could go first, because I'll have to jump off the session. I hadn't planned for it to be this long. Gas flaring historically continued because we had weak regulation in the form and insufficient, which ties to its insufficient penalties. So what I mean by weak regulation, it was cheaper to flare gas than re-inject it or utilize it in Nigeria until very recently. So any businessman, including myself, I'll flare the gas because, and just going into a bit of detail without either boring you or making it too detailed, when you're drilling for oil, you have what you call associated and non-associated gas. Associated gas is the gas that you find as a result. If you imagine punching a hole in a bottle of in a carton of Ribena, you want oil, right? But as you're sucking it out, there is gas there, which is either already in the packaging or as a result of what you are sucking out of it. That's associated gas. What happens is that when you're extracting the oil, right, you've got two options. You re-inject it or you flare it. Re-injecting is more expensive than flaring. Utilizing it, which is even a better option, which is you redirect it to a gas utilization project, which would liquefy it, or you provide it as feed gas to a power plant. All those are more expensive than just flaring it. So it was cheaper to flare the gas, right, and pay the government a very ridiculously low fine than utilize it. That is why. And also a number of these companies could not flare gas in their own countries because of strong regulation. The Nigerian government has tried to address that with fiscal incentives and the PIA, which gives a more commercial value to gas and more stringent penalties to utilize the gas, to monetize the gas. So what has happened is over the last 10 years, you've seen the amount of flare gas reduced by upwards of 70%. So it's still not ideal, but that problem is not as prevalent as it was. But it does still exist because they flare gas in Nigeria to this date, which is ridiculous. So what will happen is as we continue to utilize gas, as we continue to introduce fiscal incentives, just this week, the Nigerian president, who also holds the position of Minister of Petroleum, issued out some new policy directives and a gazette to add fiscal incentives to the midstream, which is gas utilization. It's not going to solve the problem overnight, but there are efforts being made to reduce gas flaring. The main reason being that what gas flaring was you were burning money. So imagine you had a pile of dollars sitting in your sitting room, you take a match to it, pour petrol and light it. That's what was happening. It's trying to be rectified. We've still got some ways to go, but the matter is being addressed currently, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dayo. Do we still have mentors who want to make contributions or points on this question, or can we go ahead or go further?
I think I can add something because for our company, the asset was initially awarded to us on the basis of gas utilization. So it was part of like a World Bank project to have a field where gas was not going to be flared. So in addition to our regular upstream operations, we were meant to execute, a couple of gas utilization projects, LPG, gas power, like generator plants, diesel topping plants and all that, refineries, and all that. But the thing is, as much as I would say we have, just on the back of what Dayo said around the initial penalties for gas flaring and all, looking back, I would say if my company did not have that legal obligation to implement those gas utilization projects, we wouldn't have done it. We would have just paid the penalties and, gone on with our business as usual scenario. But we had to put in the investment because the license was tied to, having those projects executed. But I would say that those projects are very expensive. After how many years, we've just, we're about commissioning a 12 million SCOF LPG plant as part of our gas utilization project. We already have like gas power generators on site as well. But it's very expensive. And I think the problem with associated gas is just to be able to make like definite projections around your gas input for the plant. So I know that our technical guys have had issues around the fact that your gas production for non-associated gas, which is what we have, we don't have gas well, it's just the associated gas with the regular crude operations. So the gas that you have, you can't really plan because the gas output is not static. It could be high today, it could be low tomorrow. And so having like long-term contracts when you are not sure of your input is actually a problem, with having gas utilization plans on the back of like a non-associated gas field and all. But generally, I just wanted to confirm that yes, it is an expensive venture, it's easier to operate a crude an oil production facility. It's a lot more difficult, to operate a gas gas production or gas utilization facilities. So those are some of the issues, but as it is, we're looking at a scenario where if you do not utilize your gas, if you flare your gas, the penalties are enormous. So it's a discussion that we're having, and we're actually looking at, ensuring that we do not have to pay those penalties. And it's not just getting the penalties, it's the fact that if you want to raise money to do any crude oil project today, you still need to have a green story. You still need to have an ESG story. So what are you going to be telling your stakeholders? Nobody wants to lend to, an upstream producer that doesn't have a plan for the gas. So if you don't get caught up on the regulatory end, you would get caught up on the financing end. And at the end of the day, it just makes business sense, because there's also money on the table to be made from this gas utilization project. So it just makes business sense to, implement those projects, get the right financiers that are interested in those kind of projects, and, try to make it work also on the operational end. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, Mr. Etulam, the floor is yours. You can also make a comment, sir.
Yeah, I know. The previous the mentors have made significant contributions. I just generally in terms of what Daya was saying, in terms of the cost per flare, we in Nigeria, I think I'll just making comparison for the US is around $3.5 per 1,000 MF. So compared to what Nigeria has for like $2, and from as an oil and gas production person, from perspective wise, it's in terms of infrastructure. I've seen within the flaring commercialization aspect, we are having inefficiencies. For me, it's like the infrastructures for gas utilization are not fully in place to be able to help operators to take up this aspect of the business. Generally, for an associated gas oil and gas, I work in an oil and gas production facility of like 50,000 barrels per day, do flare about let's say within 5 million scoff per day. And we actually have agreements with a gas producing company that produces LPG and other products for the local community and also within the economy there in the Middle East. And so what happens is that some of this gas has to be compressed. We have gas compressors compressed and sent to this gas company for them to make LPG and ethylene and all of those other products that will come up from gas. So if infrastructures are not in place and an oil operator is in a remote facility, a remote area, and like in the Niger deltas, and you want to force shell, if our regulations are not strong to be able to, and Tayo has said the fines are not so much expensive. So as an operator, I would prefer to say, okay, fine, let me just pay the fines. But in terms of environmental sustainability, we are looking at where ESG is being pushed forward for IOCs, because investors are looking into this aspect. And so for me is that improved infrastructure with gas pipeline networks that are within, that are much more developed. If you look at the US, there's a lot of connectivity in terms of the oil and gas pipeline infrastructure. So it will be easier for me as an operator to be able to say, I want to reduce flaring if there's financial viability for this. And I'm also going to have investment in achieving that. This is a problem that will continue in Nigeria. And as much as possible, if infrastructures are not put in place to enable operators, IOCs don't want to work in very high cost environments. And if you look at the cost for barrel to produce in Saudi Arabia compared to Nigeria, there's a huge difference. So, and a good example for reducing emissions in flaring is Norway. Norway in Europe supply power through hydro and to the national grid, and they are being sustained in their production and be able to significantly reduce flaring in their operation. So infrastructure is very important in achieving this.
Thank you, Mr. Etulam, for that contribution. Mr. Okeogene, do you have anything to share on this particular question? Or
Okay, okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I think I have a few perspectives. I think my fellow mentors have done justice to this already. But I think from from an oil and gas engineer and a field worker perspective, I think gas is a very uncertain product, right? It's not as easy as oil, one, and it's dangerous to deal with gas. Very dangerous. So this is one of the reasons why operators want to run away from it. I mean, this started happening many years ago when Shell was here and gas was being flared. In fact, in most of the other countries where they operate, this doesn't happen. But gas is being flared in Nigeria because of the uncertainties. And my fellow mentors talked about the investment required to ensure that the gas is converted to other useful resources that can be used. I think the green story has been talked about is one that everybody wants to have, but the uncertainty will come with gas production. I think it brings a lot of issues. Infrastructure not being in place generally. Like in Nigeria here, we have more or less crude infrastructure connected. Shell West, Shell East have connected the entire infrastructure, the likes of Total and all. Already, if you look at the oil and gas map in the Niger Delta, entire Nigeria to the north and all, we have pipelines running already with consideration for crude, right? But now for gases, you don't have this. So it's convenient to let it go at the point of production. So that is what is happening rather than deal with it, have it complicate your operation already because gas complicates the entire operation if you want to deal with it. And if not this point where we're now having penalties being given and new investors coming in to provide like AKK pipeline and many other gas pipelines around the entire nation, if this network is done effectively, using Nigeria as a case studies, you find that it will be easy to pipe your gas instead of flaring it. You're able to pipe it into the gas network in Nigeria, and then somebody off takes it from one other end and utilizes it. Let us not forget the investment made by LNG. LNG was a very smart company that came in at a time where gas was being flared and wasted and thrown away. Somebody thought about it and said, this is money that is being thrown away. How do I make use of it? And they signed a deal with federal government to say that they will do this at almost at no cost. It will be as if you're dashing them the oil. And they were able to make millions and millions of dollars today, made that investment that is very, very useful today. So the incentives were given and LNG took the advantage of it. So I would say that more companies can do this, more investment can happen in the energy space, in the gas space to ensure that gas is utilized. And then we'll have a gas master plan already for Nigeria utilization. We'll implement them and then we'll see gas being utilized and less of a flaring, as you have asked. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for also your contributions. I think we are gone past our time, so we'll be ending very soon. But just before we close the session, right, I would like to have our mentees turn on their video camera so that we can take pictures. So once we do that, we'll be off for today. So please, our mentees, can we turn on our videos? We also like to encourage our mentors to also help us turn their videos so that we can take a quick picture. Okay, can we have more mentees turn on their videos if that's going to be possible? Thank you. All right, just one more picture. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in today. Special thanks to our mentors, to Mr. Okeogene, to Ms. Obo, to Mr. Etulam, and Mr. Dayo in Essential. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your knowledge. Thank you for the expertise you've shared with us, and also the resource materials you have also shared. We truly appreciate everything that you do for us as co-partners with JIIPCC. Thank you for always being here whenever we call. And I want to also see our mentees say thank you to our mentors, saying a job well done. Very, very insightful session that we've had today. And we look forward to also having our mentors in other session. Thank you so much. And with that, we've come to the end of today's session. Have a lovely day, everyone, and enjoy your weekend all.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.